Hey guys, back again already. I'm going to start feeding some bins. Reactions are coming from everyone very well. Sounds like this is stuff people want to know and are enjoying, so let's get right into it and keep sharing. I'm on a roll, so let's do it. The bin I have in front of me, we just saw within the past hour. Very obvious it needed some more food, so we're going to feed it. And I'll show you a few different things that I like to do when I feed my worms. So recently we had a ugly Christmas sweater party. We have tons of fruits left over. They've been sitting in the fridge about 2 weeks now. So they're starting to get a little soft, a little juicy. Perfect for your worms. So what I'm going to do right off the bat, guys, is I had been seeing a high potworm content in some of my bins. That can be from a couple things, either high moisture contents or acidic. Too acidic. They like the acidic soils. So it's not a terrible thing to see potworms in your bins. They're doing the exact same thing your red wigglers, your night crawlers, any of them are doing. However, they prefer conditions a little more acidic or wet than what your wigglers do or your night crawlers. So what I'm going to do right off the bat is I keep all the eggshells, and a lot of people use this as grit. So worms have a gizzard like a chicken, and they collect coarse material or hard material that they use to grind up the foods inside the digestive system. Eggshells have a lot of calcium in them, and they also help balance your pH levels. So what I'm going to do right off the bat, which I normally don't do, but I'm trying to kind of get away from the potworms a little bit. And I know from experience that having a little higher moisture content really helps with the reproduction. So I'm kind of leaning towards that maybe the bins are a little acidic. I don't have my tester in yet to directly test the soil. So what I do, I keep all my eggshells and they get baked at like 100, 150 degrees, just enough to make sure they're dry. And then I have a $20 coffee grinder, and they go through the coffee grinder and they come out as powder. Be careful, you do not want to inhale this dust. I can see some of it coming off the container as it is. Just don't. Other options are like, don't use garden center lime for your garden or your soil. But calcium carbonate, anything with a lot of calcium in it, is going to help balance your pH levels. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little of this on the top. I always add a little to my feeding anyways. You don't have to add eggshells as grit, because they will find grit in just about anything. You can put a little bit of sand, twigs, anything coarse. I mean, you don't have to do that. I have excess of it, so why not? So we'll flip you guys down towards the bin. I've sprinkled some on, and we'll get this bin fed and see how it goes. So you can see I have it sprinkled out on top. The other thing is, when you're applying dry materials like this, you do not want to put it directly on the worms. They do not like it. So before you stir it all up, before you get them to the surface or get them visible, do it then. I mean, if you're too worried about it and maybe you're a little dry, you can always sprinkle a little moisture on top just to help. But you typically don't want to apply all your dry products directly on top of the worms. They don't like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix this all up, just because I know I want a little extra of that calcium in there to try and fight these potworms, which for some reason they are not. Wow, guys, look at these cocoons. 1, 2, 3, they're everywhere. Sorry, completely off topic. But yeah. So anyways, mixed in. I'm not going to feed heavy this time because I got a lot of worms in here, so I either am going to want to switch them out to a bigger bin, which could be the next step, but I have 2 more small ones like these, so there's a good chance that I'll probably just split them off and start 2 more bins. So I'm going to pull most of this bedding and castings and etc. back. I like to feed in one spot only, so you can see the depression as they break it down. And it gives them a place to escape to. If they're not happy with what you fed and where you fed it, or, like I mentioned in my last video, this lettuce really isn't, actually, even though they're in there and they seem to be happy with it, they're right inside. It's nice to have a part of the bin that they can escape to if they're not happy with the conditions where you just dumped all the food. I've already had a couple questions about different bugs and stuff you might encounter. I had a ton of mites on this banana the last time I came in here, and I can't find any. They've moved inside. Mites, guys, mites aren't the end of the world. They're a natural part of breaking down foods and stuff. An overabundance and overpopulation can and will be detrimental to the health of your bin, yes. But I mean, if you just see a couple, 100 tiny little mites, not a big deal, guys. The food I'm feeding today is melons, berries, and stuff that has a lot of moisture content and that has been sitting and broken down already. So, and I'm really happy with how much moisture is in this bin right now. So I am going to add a little bit of dry bedding underneath, just a little handful, just so that as that stuff keeps breaking down, that moisture will go down into this, dampen it up, and then I don't have a sopping wet area in the bin. So we're just going to take a handful. I have 3 bins to feed today, so we're just going to take a handful of these and spread it out. I'm not going to feed heavy because, like I said, I do want to split this population up. The other thing is things like berries, grapes. I like to just pinch them and squish them because the skins take forever for the worms to penetrate and get through. And just helps speed up the process because they'll just sit there and go around and around. The skins are so thick. When you break them up, now they can dive right into the meat of it. Keeps them happy. And really, it's all about speed. Why else sit here and baby these bins if you're not going to get them to produce as fast as they can produce? So if you can do anything to help them produce castings faster, produce babies faster, why not? Right? We're doing this for the worms, so let's keep at it. So we're just going to break up a few more of these grapes here. I'm going to take the old food, the old banana, place that on top. That's not too bad. I'm going to add a little bit more eggshell because I have it. And the other thing is that I use my casting specifically for seed starts in the spring and making my own soils because I do a lot of gardening. And I like all that extra calcium. It's really good for your baby plants and your young seedlings. So I like to tailor my feedings to the product that I'm trying to create. That's the other reason I like to use a lot of bananas because there's a lot of phosphorus in them. And again, great fertilizers for young babies. So let's get it in there. The other thing is coffee. Everyone's got coffee kicking around. Your used coffee grinds contain a ton of nitrogen. It also works as a grit material. So let's sprinkle it on there. Like I said, I think there's going to be enough moisture in there. I think so. I don't want to leave too much dry dust from the eggshells in there, so I will put a little bit of water. But otherwise, we're just going to flip this back over. Found a couple little pieces of lettuce here, so I'll tuck them in. Get them buried. That's it, guys. This bin's fed. I like I keep mentioning though, the cocoons are unbelievable in here. Really happy with it. And then, as I went over before, I'm happy with the moisture, so I'm not going to wet these down. There we go. Bins fed. Check in on it in a few days, a week. Like I said, you don't want food kicking around for longer than a week. Starts getting rancid, acidic-y, wet, nasty. So I'll give them 4 days, 3-4 days, check in. Probably won't do anything with it at that time, but I'll check in. And there we go. That's one bin fed. Let's bring over another one. This one we haven't seen yet. Hopefully I can find something in here that I haven't touched base on already. It looks like this side is much lower than this side, so I'm guessing I probably fed over there. Like I said, I leave some of this on top. I'll probably just mix it in. But let's just see what we see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like cocoons everywhere, guys. So obviously these bins are healthy. Worms are happy because they're reproducing and laying eggs like crazy. Again, that lettuce wasn't frozen, so it's taking a long time to break down. I do have a good banana in here. This one, not necessarily as progressed as the rest. I'm seeing a few mites, nothing crazy. So most of this white stuff that you see in here is just eggshells, but there's some tiny little white kind of at the tip of my finger. There are a few mites in there, but again, potworms seem to be gone, so I'm gonna guess that it was probably just too wet. It is a little wet underneath here. This, for the new people, you'll probably like to see that. Don't be afraid. I mean, the people say they don't like being mixed up. Nah, whatever. I'm over it. I'll mix these guys up every few days because it also helps aerate their environment. So I'm going to take this food, just kind of lay it off to the side, and I'm going to mix this paper in. Holy Jesus, guys, look at the worms in here. Man. I bought a pound, and these are supposedly some sort of hybrid red wigglers. I've never seen reproduction like this. It is wild. It doesn't matter where you go in this bin. It is just saturated with worms. Really, really happy with these guys. There's easily 2 pounds in here, so that's doubled its population in less than 2 months, which is impressive. So again, same thing. Sorry, I need to make sure you guys keep seeing what I'm doing. Just going to pull this old food scraps off to the side. The other things is you'll get a lot of just solid, thicker castings on the bottom, so it's nice to mix it up and just aerate it a little bit, in my opinion anyways. Put the old food down. Give it a little bit of bedding. Again, I don't want to give too much bedding because I do want to finish these bins at some point. At some point, they're going to be just straight worm castings. So I don't want to keep adding bedding, and then next thing you know, I have no room left in the bin for material, and then there's still a whole bunch of unprocessed material. Then what do you do with it? Then you're stuck to sifting. And I'll tell you from experience, the sifting part is a pain in the butt, especially if you're trying to remove the cocoons and just make straight castings unless you have a mechanical sifter. And guys, I don't wear gloves. By the time you mix all this stuff up, there's really no big difference. So, add a few more grapes here. Kind of pinch a few of these grapes up. If you want, you can add a little more bedding to the top. I mean, just play with your bins. See what happens. Don't be afraid to get down there, get dirty, and see what they think of it. So we'll give them a little calcium, aka eggshells. Also, I have tons of it. So I got a whole another container here. This is just full to the brim. Again, just a coffee grinder, bake it, dry it out. I have tons of coffee, great nitrogen source. So just from what I'm seeing right now, it looks like I fed this bin directly way more than I fed the last one. And they're the same size, same starting population, same start date, same everything. So this actually might be a good comparison to see how it turns out in a week. And again, we'll just cover them up. Done. Touch back again in a few days. Nothing simple or nothing too complicated. Now, I don't even know if I'll get this whole bin in the camera shot. This is my oldest bin. This, again, also only started with just 1 pound. 1 pound of red wigglers. Right off the bat, I see a good depression here, so I'm guessing I fed here. Lots of good castings on the top. Lots of great castings. There was a very thick layer of shredded paper on top, so I mean they're going through it. This bin is going to need to be harvested sooner than later. After this feeding, I'm going to consider just letting them forage and just letting them clean up what's left so that I can start screening castings out. There's a lot of material in here, quite a bit. It is a big, deep bin. There is a lot of bedding left. So it's kind of hard to tell, but there's a good chunk of worms. And like I said, those other ones I got, they're considered, I mean, the website considered them a hybrid. So they're a lot thicker. They're a bigger worm. So these guys are your typical red wigglers, and they're a little harder to see. Again, lots of bedding in here, so we'll just give it a good mix up. I'm not seeing any bugs. I'm not seeing fruit flies. I'm not seeing fungus gnats. I'm not seeing mites. I'm not seeing anything. But again, they have 3/4 of this. This is a 10-gallon bin. They have 3/4 of this bin to just rummage around in. I only feed in the one side. So they got lots of room to play. So they could be a little thinner over here. We'll see. But it's hard to get a judge on quantities on this side just because of the sheer volume of castings and bedding and whatever else we're digging into. So we'll get this kind of piled up and out of the way. And this is obviously where I fed left, like I predicted. Fed last, sorry. So I'll scrape a little more off the top. Exact same thing as I thought we'd see. These lettuces were never frozen, any of that stuff, so they're taking a while to break down. Reproduction-wise, again, bigger bin, more material, so hard to tell. I see a young cocoon here. I know it's younger because, as I mentioned in my last video, it's the color of it. So you'll see that's kind of pretty green. That's a pretty young cocoon, young egg at that point. So that's the other thing. Your more mature eggs are going to be harder to see because they're going to turn darker and become more the color of everything else you're looking at. So it could be just kind of a distraction to your eyes. So here's the old area where I fed. Yeah, the worms are working at this lettuce, but they're not thrilled with it because it's not broken down enough. And it's still, I mean, you could damn near rinse that off and eat it. So it's not ideal for them. Population-wise, we look good. All right, I do see some potworms in here. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Let's see if we can get those in the shot for you guys to see. So you see those, you can see those tiny little white worms moving around. They're very, very small. Those are your potworms. Again, not a big deal. It does feel fairly wet down here, so it's probably more of a moisture issue versus a acidity issue. They love the insides of these bananas. They just love the inside of this stuff. Actually, the inside of this banana is littered with, you can see the red worms, and then you can see the white ones underneath it. I'm not sure. Hopefully you can see it. I think you can. Those are your potworms. Oh, look, there's a fresh egg right inside this old banana. Bananas aren't acidic at all, so obviously it's not the acidity that they're being attracted to. It's just the moisture. And yes, see, this is all potworms in here. But again, like I said, not a big deal. All I'm going to do is just add a little extra bedding onto this side. Kind of bring the moisture content down a little bit. I'm going to pull all this extra material over and start just a whole new spot here. So we'll get we'll do a little extra cardboard. This is all trial and error, guys. Everyone's houses, atmospheres are different. Everyone's bins are different. So just play with it. But yeah, we'll get the rest of our food in here. Not a huge feeding, number one, because I overfed that last bin. Well, I didn't overfeed it, but I gave it more than I expected it to. It wasn't an even third between each bin. Just going to pinch out some of these grapes and stuff. Bust up the skins. The other thing is, I'm kind of actually happy it worked out this way because I have so much bedding still left in these castings. And I do want to get this bin towards a harvesting stage because it is starting to get a little full. So not a terrible thing that they're getting a little less food than the rest, because then they'll concentrate more on foraging and finishing up what's left over here. Funny how things work out like that. And got a little eggshell in there. And guys, I'm not paying attention, so hopefully you're seeing this all in the light that I'm seeing it. Lots of coffee left over. Why not just give it all to them? Moisture content was really good, almost a little damp. It's kind of like right where I want it. So what I'm going to do is just leave it. Not going to bother sprinkling water on top of it, even though my gut's telling me to. And I'll just check on it sooner. I'll come back in 2 or 3 days rather than a week or, 4 or 5. See, the other thing is, so now I'll cover it when I'm done, but there's nothing wrong with coming in 3 or 4 days and just kind of pulling back until you get to the top of where you were and just seeing kind of what's going on. Or even just opening up a corner, pushing all that other material away and just kind of digging down underneath, just so you know what's going on. Because if you don't know, and it's a poor condition, let's say it's too wet, too dry, or you thought the food that you gave it was going to have a high moisture content and it didn't, so you have a bunch of dry bedding underneath there, the worms are always going to go back to the moisture. They're not going to like that dry stuff. So there's nothing wrong with just flipping it up and giving it a little aeration. They still need oxygen. And check it out. Make sure they're happy. But when it comes to feeding, it's pretty much it, guys. There's nothing to it. That's a chunk of wood. Weird. Let them at it. There's a million different things on the top of my head. But let's just keep it simple for tonight. That's it. That will be the end of my second video. That is how, where, and when to start your first ever worm bin. And how to feed. Cover that up. And, there's a fungus gnat right there. But I know these fungus gnats, they came from some soil that I have my succulents in. Canadian Tire had a batch of shitty soil, and other people on Facebook, exact same product, same problem. So I know those fungus gnats aren't coming from my bins, they're coming from my plants. But yeah. For the first 2 videos, I think we covered a lot, guys. Hopefully that answers a lot of questions for other people. Do not be afraid on the Facebook, on the YouTube. Ask away. If I know, I'll try and help you out. If I don't know, I will find out. So anyways, again, Merry Christmas. Have a good night, guys.